Two seemingly unrelated events happened in the past few days, and they have now resulted in the creation of this very video. First, I watched Studio Ghibli's The Boy and the Heron, and second, the new Snow White trailer dropped. I doubt that any of you will be surprised that the new Snow White trailer was received poorly, but it led me on a spiral of thoughts about art, Disney, and legacy. Disney has left many great things to the world, no two ways about it. After all, producing the first full-length traditionally animated feature film and creating media that to this day is beloved and deeply ingrained in people's minds is no small feat. But even a giant like Disney can't afford to rest on their laurels forever, so it got me wondering, how do they feel about their own legacy and how do they want to continue it? If you're wondering how Studio Ghibli's The Boy and the Heron ties into all of this, it is the latest Miyazaki movie and follows the story of Mahito, a boy who lives in Tokyo during the Pacific War and ends up losing his mom in a fire, which results in his father remarrying and moving to the countryside where Mahito encounters a strange bird, a grey heron that leads him to a dreamlike world where Mahito goes through a sort of a coming-of-age journey. The story is quite interesting and complex, so it requires an analysis of its own, but what piqued my interest were the somewhat autobiographical aspects of it. The movie meets us with a character that lives in the dreamlike world, the great uncle, who abandoned our flawed human reality and spent his days in the dreamlike land, trying to create a perfect, harmonious world that he wishes to pass on to Mahito to continue, add on to and protect. The great uncle, of course, can be interpreted as Miyazaki himself, and his yearning for his life's work to be continued and later on grappling with and accepting Mahito's rejection to do so. Following your passion and creating something beautiful to give to the world is a wonderful thing, but finding a successor who sees the world the way you saw it is almost impossible, I believe. And while Mahito was given the choice to say no, the people at Disney can't say no. They must go on. And they do. Nobody is thinking of stopping their gigantic money-making machine. But how do you continue a legacy that's not your own? How do you add on to somebody else's ideal world without ruining it? There is a moment in The Boy and the Heron where the uncle tells Mahito whether this world becomes beautiful or an abomination is entirely in your hands. And I can't help but notice that in recent years, Disney has been making decisions that make them lean towards the abomination side. And I have several theories as to why that is. Firstly, I think they've mixed feelings about a legacy that they've inherited. On one hand, they're proud of it. They are where they are today because of it. But on the other hand, they seem to be ashamed of the so-called problematic aspects of it. Those ranging from objectively harmful stereotypes and unfair portrayals to some more subjective topics such as the relationships between men and women. Secondly, as years have been passing and more people have been talking about the impact Disney had on them, it shaped the careers of some, it shaped the romantic expectations of others, and so on, Disney in a way has started perceiving themselves as educators, the ones who are to teach their audience what's right and wrong. However, being the authoritative figure that spreads a moral message is a double-edged sword. On one hand, if you improve people's lives, it can feel quite fulfilling. But on the other hand, you might forget one key truth. A truth that we see examined in The Boy and the Heron. As mentioned before, in the beginning of the movie we see Mahito going to the countryside to live with his father and his new mom. Soon after he goes to school, where he is bullied by his peers. Overwhelmed by pain, helplessness, anger, frustration, Mahito grabs a stone and inflicts a wound upon himself. Later on, when he is in the dreamlike world and his great-uncle offers him to become his successor, urging him to create a perfect world of his own, void of malice, Mahito touches the wound that he has self-inflicted, saying this wound is a sign of his own malice, refusing to continue the work of his uncle, implying that he tainted the perfection by being imperfect himself. There are many interpretations of why he felt like that towards his self-inflicted wound, but I like to think that it was due to his realization that he's flawed like all humans. He felt pain, he felt anger, perhaps he felt hatred towards himself for his situation or the kids that bullied him. Whatever the case is, he felt negative human emotions that left a physical mark on him, a reminder that he himself is an imperfect part of an imperfect world. I'm not highlighting this moment to discourage people from making art, on the contrary, I find it to be a lovely endeavor. But If your works lean into morality and teaching others, it is essential that you recognize your own malice first. Recognizing it puts you on equal grounds with all other humans. The past indeed did wrongs, but whatever they had within themselves to do those wrongs, we have it too. The first step of trying to bring something better to the world is realizing you're not the measurement of goodness. You're a human with your own biases, with your own traumas, with your own warped perception of the world. I like to believe in the good intentions of the creatives at Disney. I think it is quite natural for artistic people to be more sensitive to the world's injustice and to be passionate about taking an action and standing up for what's right. Nobody's the villain in their own story. I don't think they're releasing their recent movies with the presumption that they're making something bad or hurtful. They might even feel like they misunderstood the artist, who is standing up to a hateful society that doesn't understand them as they're ahead of their time with their progressive views. They are on the right side of history. But it is this exact sense of righteousness that prevents them from seeing the issues in their own work and blinds them to the fact that their new legacy that they themselves are living at the moment is no less flawed than the past. What are we to make of all the racial and gender divide that their works constantly instigate? What are we to make of all the negativity surrounding their new productions? It is true, an artist is not responsible for every individual interpretation of their art, but at the same time, they can look at the overall result of their creation and see what it has brought to the world. Does it bring people hope? Does it make them happy? Does it inspire them to create art too? I read my comment section and there are so many of you who've shared how the old Disney movies inspired you and to this day shape the way you move in life. But what about modern Disney?
It's really not about the love story at all, which is really, really wonderful.
What mark will we leave on the world?
Your saga longs to create something to inspire the next generation.
And I like that I can pour my heart and soul into what I'm growing, to make sure it becomes exactly what I need it to be. Something strong, that lasts. A legacy that my son can be proud of.
I've been paying close attention to some of the things the modern Disney characters say. I believe that a piece of art in one way or another echoes the innermost thoughts of its creator, and so in those clips I think I recognize the artist's desire to leave a worthy legacy. Something good for the people, something we'd be proud of. And despite how grim the situation may seem in recent years, I actually think there is a way to do it. First, we need to go back to the basics. What is legacy? Why do people want to leave it? According to the definition, legacy is something transmitted by or received from an ancestor or predecessor or from the past. There is an article that defines it in this way. Leaving a legacy means giving something that will be valued and treasured by those who survive after your death. It requires thought to ensure that any items that have meaning to you will also have meaning to those you designate to inherit them. I think, in its purest form, a successful legacy is not created intentionally. It is the byproduct of one's love for their work and for the people. I had a very interesting comment a while ago by a lovely viewer who comments regularly on my videos, for which I'm very appreciative. They said, I really think Disney is struggling with brand expansion/image. In the 2010s, they had movies that were the company's first to reach 1 billion. Now, they're desperate to keep emulating the vibe. They failed to master being exploratory and being Disney. At this point, corporate is too afraid to let their creatives do their job, instead trying to focus on how well it fits the brand. And so, if that's the case, we could presume that the creatives at Disney lack the first component of living a successful legacy, that being working on something they're passionate about. Perhaps they feel like they're stuck in a sort of limbo, where they don't extend disavow parts of their old legacy but are unable to detach from it and do something on their own because the company is reliant on the old works for profits. However, if it was just a vibe that they had to emulate, I think their recent works would be closer to the live-action Cinderella, which people like by the way, where it copies the old vibe and tries to add on to it. But their most recent works uncover an evident conflict between the creators and their audience, meaning they aren't fulfilling the second component of a successful legacy, that being of value to the people. I think one's legacy should be predominantly looked at as a gift from a talented person to those whom they love. Have you ever had an experience of having a new friend and you want to buy them a Christmas or birthday gift but you don't know much about them, so you kind of end up buying something you like, hoping that they'd like it too, and sometimes it's a hit, sometimes it's a miss? That's what it's like creating art or stories for people you don't know. And I think your work and their experience can improve tremendously if you try to know a little bit about them. While you can't individually meet every single person in your audience, you can listen to their overall complaints. You don't have to bend to their will, but you can see what's hurting them. I know it is difficult, especially when some of the complaints are so rude and so mean-spirited, but you as an artist have the power of empathy. You need to tap into it, like Naushka of the Valley of the Wind, who let the grumpy fox squirrel bite her in order to calm her down and befriend her, saying, "See, you were just frightened." You'd probably have to sacrifice yourself to be bitten by a few mean comments to get to the bottom of the problem and see the hurt of the audience. Why are they throwing such tantrums? What's wounded them? I believe Disney's core audience are not some evil people who are complaining for the sport and who like all Disney because of its problematic parts. On the contrary, they probably overlooked the problematic parts because of everything else positive that the movies brought. We live in a weird time. In some corners of the world, people are at war. In other corners, people feel overworked and helpless. A lot feel empty. The world seems bleak. Many struggle with personal pain and losses. Many feel unloved and lash out at each other in order not to get hurt first. And what they need right now is not Disney to preach at them what's the right way to live life, nor to educate them or re-educate them or judge them about who they are. What they need is comfort. A while ago, I stumbled upon this post that showcased different cozy scenes from old Disney. While there were 2 or 3 comments under the post complaining about LGBTQ and wokeness, most people were actually lamenting the loss of something magical and comforting, something mysterious and cozy. Disney was at its peak when it brought comfort and hope, when it transported their audience to whimsical worlds where even adults could for a moment feel like they were children again. Diversity is not the problem, the mean, condescending tone, that's the real issue. I understand why Disney can't let go of their old works, but if they really have to stick to them, why not abandon the judgment and instead focus on what's positive in them and try to amplify it? There was no appropriate moment to mention this earlier, but there were several nods to Disney in The Boy and the Heron. For example, the character Himi being carried in a pretty glass coffin like Snow White, or the 7 grandmas who lived in the big countryside mansion serving the main character's family. I saw someone pointing out the designs of the grandmas, how they were more stylized than the other human characters in the story, slightly reminiscent of the dwarves in Snow White and harkening back to the time when animation was made to look whimsical and brought wonder and joy to their viewers. A call for artists to remember why they wanted to work something like this in the first place. Why are they even making art? What do they want to achieve? How do they want to live their lives? If the creatives at Disney cared to look at their work objectively, I like to think that they wouldn't be happy with the state of their legacy at present. What is the point of leaving further gender and racial divide to your children? How is that better than the past? Can you truly judge the past and go ahead and do nothing to improve it? Are you not turning into what you swore to destroy? I don't think Disney should dumb down their works to avoid hot topics and societal problems, but they could approach them with more humility and compassion for the human condition. Artists are great healers. Their strength isn't in taking teams and leading battles against the wrong side. It is in understanding all and choosing not to judge and instead establish better relationships between people who don't like each other, being the mediator that helps them get closer to one another and see the value in those who they don't understand. It is easy to burn bridges, but it is much more rewarding to build stronger ones for the future generations to walk on, because in its essence, that is the meaning of living a worthy legacy.